Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third and final presentation from Elder Parminder in Arkansas. Would you please join me in prayer? Dear God, we thank you for this opportunity to be together. We thank you for your good. We thank you for your goodness towards us. Help us to understand as we study together. Continue to lead us, guide us, and direct us. In the name of Jesus, amen.
I want to welcome everybody back to the third presentation in this camp meeting.
Jeg vil gerne byde alle velkommen til denne tredje præsentation ved det her camp meeting.
We just want to do a quick review of the work that we did yesterday.
Vi vil gerne starte med en kort gennemgang og opsummering af det, som vi nåede i går.
So we discussed the Millerite line.
Vi diskuterede Milleritternes linje,
And we saw that the emphasis of Ellen White's writings was the Sabbath.
og vi så, at Ellen White i sin skrift, der har fokus på sabbaten.
Until we go to which book and which chapter.
Indtil vi når til hvilken bog og hvilket kapitel.
Bob?
Chapter 33 in spiritual gifts for volume 1.
So we go to Spiritual Gifts, Volume 1, Chapter 33.
Så vi går til Spiritual Gifts, første bind, kapitel 33.
And do we know what date that was written?
Og ved vi, på hvilken dato det blev skrevet?
48.
You said
48.
1848.
1848.
But we normally go to early writings,
Normalt så går vi til early writings,
which is a compilation. Hopefully we all know that.
hvilket er en samling. Det ved vi forhåbentlig godt.
I think it's two books, Experience and Views and Spiritual Gifts.
Jeg tror, det er to bøger, Experience of Views og Spiritual Gifts.
And the chapter title is The Sins of Babylon.
Og kapitlet hedder Babylons synder.
And we know that early writings was written much later, almost 40 years later.
Og vi ved, at early writings, det blev skrevet en del senere, omkring 40 år senere.
I shouldn't say written because it's just two books put together and republished.
Jeg bør ikke sige, at det blev skrevet, men da det var to bøger, der blev sammensat og udgivet.
Hence the title.
Derfor titlen.
Okay, so I want us to remember when this movement, this subject,
Jeg vil gerne have, at vi husker, og så kan vi høre, hvad der blev sagt.
when this movement looked at this subject,
Da den her bevægelse så på det her emne,
the subject of the Sunday law.
Emnet om søndagsloven.
So let's not add things to what I didn't say. So we went to early writings. We didn't go to spiritual gifts.
Vi gik til early writings og ikke til spiritual gifts.
Why is that significant
Og hvorfor er det signifikant?
or problematic, depending on how you view it?
Eller problematisk, afhængig af, hvordan du ser på det.
Okay, so in our group, no one has a thought
Okay, så ingen i vores gruppe har en tanke,
except Alyssa.
udover Alyssa.
Go ahead.
Because of the 1888 history was preparing them for that time.
So Alyssa said because of the 1888 history, preparing them for that time.
Så Alyssa, hun siger, udover 1888-historien, som forberedte dem til det tidspunkt.
So that's true. That book was written to prepare them for the 1888 history that's about to come.
Så det er sandt, at den bog blev skrevet forud for 1888-historien, som var ved at komme.
But what's the problem, if I can put it that way?
Hvis jeg kan sige det på den måde.
This movement has gone to early writings, chapter 33, and has said what?
Men hvad er problemet? Den her bevægelse er gået til Early Writings kapitel 33, og hvad har vi sagt?
What we said about the chapter.
Hvad sagde vi i forhold til kapitlet?
Go to the title, the subject, what we said, why have we gone to 33?
Det kan være titlen, det kan være kapitlet. Hvorfor gik vi til kapitel 33?
Carol? Kathy?
Went to it because it was the United States slavery.
Okay, so we go to that chapter because it talks about Babylon.
Hvis vi går til det kapitel, for det taler om Babylon,
The sin that Babylon commits,
synden, som Babylon begår,
which is slavery. That's what Kathy just said.
hvilket er slaveri. Det er det, som Kathy lige sagde.
So we're going to, can someone find out when early writings is published? I think it's in the 1880s. Hopefully I'm correct.
Så er der nogen, der kan finde ud af, hvornår
We're
det er udgivet.
if you can confirm, am I cutting out?
Ja, jeg er afbrudt.
Okay. Correct. Okay. We're going to see if we can do something with our internet or not.
Vi vil se, om vi kan gøre noget med vores internet. Eller ej.
Okay. So we've just confirmed it's 1882.
Okay, så vi har lige fået det bekræftet. Det er 1882.
Okay, so we're using the book that's published in 1882 to develop a theory or a model.
Okay, så vi bruger en bog, der er udgivet i 1882 for at udvikle en teori eller en model.
And that theory says that there's a slavery component to end time prophecy.
Den teori siger, at der er et slaveri-aspekt til endetidsprofetien.
Why has Ellen White republished that material?
Hvorfor har Ellen White genudgivet det materiale
6 years before 88?
6 år inden 1888?
Someone said earlier to prepare them for that, the events that are coming up.
Nogen sagde for at forberede dem til de begivenheder, som skulle til at ske.
And what does the church or Ellen White publish in 88?
Hvad udgiver kirken eller Ellen White i 1888?
Got to give her a chance to translate. Linda? The Great Controversy.
Stor strid.
How many editions of The Great Controversy are there?
Mange
Do we know?
at en stor strid er der.
Some people say two.
Nogle siger 2,
Okay. So it's at least two.
så det er mindst 2.
Is there three?
Er der 3?
They came up with some abridged version that doesn't include everything. And what became called great controversy.
Who did that?
If you're following, but someone published.
Oh, that's recent. I'm not talking about that one. So we've got 1888 and 1911.
Så vi har 1888 og 1911.
So I hate to add information, so I won't. But I think there's another one.
Så jeg bryder mig ikke om at tilføje information.
I think there's one in 84.
Jeg tror, der er en i 1884.
Okay, but that's irrelevant. So we've got 82
Så der er-
is going to lead us to 88.
Så vi har 82, som vil føre os til 88.
David, the 88 great controversy, who is the target audience?
David, så 1888, hvem er målgruppen?
David says the world.
David, han siger verden.
The 1911 is definitely for the world. And
Den
so are we all in the,
er bestemt for verden.
go ahead. Anybody got a different thought? So Alyssa thinks it's the 1888 version is for the church, not the world.
Okay, så Elisa, hun tror, at 1888-udgaven, den er for kirken og ikke for verden.
Okay, so we have some disagreement here, and I'm not going to explore that any further.
Okay, så vi har nogle uenigheder her, men jeg vil ikke gå dybere i det.
Without asking the group here, I'm going to say that we all agree the early writings is for the church.
Uden at spørge gruppen her, så vil jeg sige, at vi alle er enige om, at early writings, den er for kirken.
And what is it preparing the church for?
Hvad er det, den forbereder kirken til?
Correct? But we're in 1882, so you can't be preparing for 1850.
Men vi er i 1882, så den kan ikke forberede til 1800 og et eller andet.
Understand? Second advent. Okay, so I'm going to suggest that it's preparing them for the Sunday law, not the second advent.
Okay, så jeg vil foreslå, at det forbereder dem til søndagsloven og ikke det andet komme.
When you read I'm going to suggest when we read Ellen White's writings,
Jeg vil foreslå, at når vi læser Ellen Whites skrifter,
the Sunday law, close of probation, second advent always come as a cluster. They always just come together.
så kommer søndagsloven, det andet komme, og nødens stund altid i en gruppe.
So second advent is correct, but we know what's about to happen is the 1888 history, which is not the second advent.
Så det andet komme er korrekt, men vi ved alle sammen, hvad der vil ske i 1888-historien.
In 82,
I 1882,
I'm just gonna put them together. Jones and Wagner.
jeg vil for nemhedens skyld bare slå dem sammen. Der er Jones og Wagner.
Are they nobodies or are they leading lights in the movement?
Er Jones og Wagner nogen, som ingen kender til, eller er de ledende frontfigurer i bevægelsen, i
Let's
adventbevægelsen?
take the word leading. Are they lights in the movement or are they nobodies?
Lad os spørge, er de lys, eller er de ingen?
I'm not asking about the dad, I'm asking about the son.
Jeg spørger ikke om faren, jeg spørger om sønnen.
Anyone else?
Nogle andre?
I said they were nobodies.
Okay. So most people think that they're nobodies and they just spring out of nowhere in the 1888 history.
Så de fleste vil sige, at de ikke var nogen særlig de har ikke nogen særstatus på det tidspunkt, og de bare hopper ud i 1888-historien.
But we need to remember when they had the general conference and the controversy occurs,
Jeg er nødt til at huske, at når vi har generalkonferencen, og striden den udspringer,
you know, only the movers and shakers, only the leaders are invited to those meetings,
så
those
ved,
private ones.
så ved vi, at det kun er lederne, der bliver inviteret til de her private møder.
These men are already leaders in some capacity in the church.
Disse mænd, de er allerede ledere i kirken i en vis kapacitet.
Ellen White knows who they are, and she's aware of their work.
Ellen White, hun ved, hvem de er, og hun er bevidst om deres arbejde.
I don't know how much visibility she has. I don't know what messages the Lord has given her, but she knows 88 is coming.
Jeg ved ikke, hvilke syner hun bliver givet af Gud, men hun ved, at 1888 er på vej.
Wait, could you just do that plastic at the back? So, she's aware of what's going on. So she's going to publish early writings.
Så hun ved, hvad der foregår, og hun vil udgive early writings.
And I'm suggesting she's going to do that to prepare the church for the soon coming Sunday law crisis.
Jeg vil foreslå, at hun gør det for det nært forestående søndagslovs. Nært
But
forestående.
we've used the book,
Men vi bruger bogen,
the chapter,
kapitlet,
to make a point about a history that occurred 32 years prior.
til at komme med en pointe om en historie, som skete 32 år forud.
So I want us to see the irony of that,
Så jeg vil gerne have, at vi ser ironien i det.
because if Ellen White had any inkling that there was a slavery component to end time prophecy,
For hvis Ellen White, hun havde nogen som helst anelse om, at der var et slaverikomponent til endetidsprofetien,
or racism, depending on how we want to see it,
eller racisme, afhængig af, hvordan vi gerne vil se på det,
you'd have expected her to make some comment or make some adjustment to those early writings.
så havde man forventet, at hun havde lavet nogle justeringer og rettelser til de her tidlige skrifter, early writings.
So not only do you see it within the book itself, Spiritual Gifts, Volume 1,
Så man ser ikke blot alene i bogen Spiritual Gifts første bind,
that it being the Sabbath, that's the focus.
at den fokuset der er sabbaten.
You see the way she's going to use that material after the 1850 history, 32 years later,
Man ser, hvordan hun vil bruge den her historie efter 1850, 32 år senere.
she's going to say
Hun vil sige,
that chapter 33,
at kapitel 33,
along with the rest of the book,
sammen med resten af bogen,
Spiritual Gifts,
Spiritual Gifts,
is to prepare you for what?
er at forberede dig til hvad?
The Sunday law,
Til søndagsloven.
not a slavery test. It's a Sabbath test.
Ikke en slaveritest, det er en sabbatstest.
So I want us to understand as we approach that chapter,
Så jeg vil gerne have, at vi forstår, at som vi tilgår det kapitel,
on several levels, we are out of sync, out of synchronization with Ellen White's thoughts, with Ellen White's thinking.
at på flere niveauer, der er vi ude af, der er vi ikke synkroniseret med Ellen Whites tankegang og måde at tænke på omkring de begivenheder, der foregår.
So I don't know if anybody's got any comments on that or if it worries or troubles anybody,
Så
but
jeg ved
I
ikke,
want us to be aware of that.
så jeg ved ikke, om der er nogen, der har nogle kommentarer til det, eller det bekymrer nogen, men jeg vil gerne have, at vi er bevidste om det.
If we'd gone to Spiritual Gifts Volume 1 and developed all of this, that would have been one thing.
Hvis vi havde gået til Spiritual Gifts og udviklet alt det her, så havde det været en anden ting.
because we would be here 2 years before the Sunday law,
Fordi vi vil være her 2 år før søndagsloven,
and we could say she's predicting something,
og vi vil kunne sige, at hun har forudsagt
that
noget,
slavery is going to be the test.
at slaveriet vil være testen.
So we should have gone to Spiritual Gifts Volume 1 if we wanted to have a more solid argument, but we went to early writings.
Så vi burde have gået til Spiritual Gifts første bind, hvis vi ville have et mere solidt argument, men vi gik til Early Writings.
And the slavery issue is too late to discuss 32 years later.
Og slaveriproblemet, det er lidt for sent at diskutere 32 år senere.
So either Ellen White is discarding chapter 33 or she views it differently.
Så enten så kaster Ellen White kapitel 32 ud, eller så ser hun forskelligt på det.
And so this is just another example of how we relate to inspiration, which is fundamentally different to the church.
Så det er blot endnu et eksempel på, hvordan vi ser inspiration anderledes, hvilket er fundamentalt anderledes end kirken.
It's fundamentally different to Protestantism.
Det er fundamentalt anderledes end protestantismen.
It's much more Catholic than Protestant,
Det er meget mere katolsk end protestantisk,
because now we claim that we have power or authority to reinterpret inspiration.
fordi nu hævder vi, at vi har magt og kraft til at fortolke inspirationen.
Any comments,
Nogle kommentarer?
Melissa?
So in 1888, in the United States history in that time, there were many, after emancipation, after 65, a lot of Black people entered the political arena, and more in 1888.
I don't want a history, just tell me the point you're making, because I can't translate all of that, sorry.
That in the US politics, a lot of white people were getting Black people kicked out of their office.
Okay, so the point you're making,
Okay, så pointen, som
Maybe
du
she
laver,
was seeing that and preaching against it.
so Alyssa says that the political landscape approaching 1888
så Elisa siger, at det politiske landskab, som man tilgår, nærmer sig 1888.
there's still a racial tension that's happening in the United States, even at a political level.
Så er der stadig nogle racemæssige spændinger, der stadig foregår i USA, selv på et politisk niveau.
And she's suggesting that Ellen White's going to introduce this book with that statement about slavery because of the political climate.
Nogen foreslår, at Ellen White, hun vil introducere det her kapitel i den her bog, på grund af det politiske klima.
Was that for representation what you said?
Og præsentere
Any
det,
other thoughts?
som du sagde.
Okay, so we then discussed the issue of personalist political.
Dernæst diskuterede vi emnet om det personlige og det politiske.
And I think it's important for us to understand what this means.
Og jeg synes, det er vigtigt for os at forstå, hvad det betyder.
Whether you say the political is the personal or the personal is political.
Og men man siger, at det politiske er det personlige, eller det personlige er det politiske.
Recently on the media broadcast, I posted, I can't remember what the format was, but I posted some information
For nylig på Media Broadcast-gruppen, der delte jeg noget information
about Steve Jobs, Apple, and the iPhone.
omkring Steve Jobs, Apple og iPhone-telefonen.
So I hope at least most of us remember why I did that.
Jeg håber, at de fleste af os i det mindste husker, hvorfor jeg gjorde det.
It was a series that was done by the BBC called The New Gurus.
Det var en serie, som blev lavet af BBC i England, som hedder De Nye Guruer.
And I think the story about Steve Jobs was the first of a 9-part series. Or
I
maybe
mean,
10.
Og jeg mener, at Steve Jobs episoden, det var den første af i alt 8 eller 10 afsnit.
So there are many points to be taken from that material, that information.
Okay, så der er mange pointer, man kan tage fra det materiale, man kan udlede, man kan finde.
So what I wanted us to see
Så det, som jeg gerne vil have, at vi så,
was that the iPhone was developed
det var, at
in
iPhone-telefonen
connection with the software and the infrastructure of the internet
i forbindelse med softwaren og infrastrukturen af internettet.
So you need all of those three components. You need an infrastructure, you need software, and you need hardware.
Hvis man har brug for alle de 3 komponenter, man har brug for infrastruktur, man har brug for hardware og software.
And what's the purpose of all of those things?
Og hvad er formålet med alle de ting?
The purpose that I wanted us to see.
Det formål, som jeg gerne vil have, at vi så.
Very rapid communication.
Rapid communication, Bob says.
Bob siger
Linda?
hurtig
Oh.
kommunikation.
Linda?
To be a God.
It was to be a God.
Det var for at være en Gud.
Anyone else?
Nogle andre?
Basically, when they said a spiritual journey, it was a spiritual. Yeah, journey is the best.
So it was about Steve Jobs' spiritual journey,
Så det handlede om Steve Jobs åndelige rejse.
his dissatisfaction because he couldn't find a guru to guide and direct him.
Så han var misfornøjet over at ikke have en guru, som kunne vejlede.
So he
Og
essentially creates a tool or a system to help people who find themselves in the same situation as he found himself in.
så han ville gerne udvikle et redskab eller værktøj, som kunne hjælpe andre mennesker med samme problem, som han fandt sig selv i.
We might call it self-help.
Vi vil muligvis kalde det selvhjælp.
But what I wanted us to see,
Men det, som jeg gerne vil have, at vi så,
that this was a religious phenomena.
det var, at det her, det var et religiøst fænomen.
It's not about the information and Google can teach you anything you want to know. It wasn't that.
Det handler ikke om den personlige information, og at Google kan lære dig alt, du ønsker at vide. Det var ikke det.
So this is about religion,
Så det her, det handler om religion.
and therefore the component that Linda said about God is involved in this.
Og derfor er komponenten Gud, som Linda nævnte, involveret i
That
det.
you can find God by yourself with these tools.
At man selv kan finde Gud ved de her værktøjer.
God is the truth. Truth is about information, and you can find anything you want to know without anyone's help.
Gud, han er sandhed, og sandhed, det er information, så man kan finde Gud uden nogen former for hjælp fra andre.
And today things have developed so far. Now you've got, if I can use that term, a priest to guide you.
Og i dag så har ting udviklet sig så hurtigt, at jeg vil, og man må bruge begrebet, at man har en præst til at guide
Which we
sig,
call AI.
som vi kalder for kunstig intelligens.
Currently it's ChatGPT, but that will change soon enough. It will be something else.
Lige nu så hedder det ChatGPT, men det vil ændre sig før eller siden.
So why did I want us to see that this was a religious story?
Så hvorfor vil jeg gerne have os til at se, at det her det var en religiøs historie?
So there were a couple of things I wanted us to see.
Så der var et par ting, jeg gerne vil have, at vi så.
If anybody's got any thoughts, they can share them.
Hvis der er nogen, der har nogle tanker, så er de velkommen til at dele dem.
Go ahead. No? Okay. So one of them was that religion and culture. there is no difference between religion and culture.
Så en af dem, det var, at der ikke er nogen forskel mellem religion og kultur.
The two sides of the same coin.
De to sider af den samme mønt.
For this group over here, we'll call them the Nephilims, culture controls them.
For gruppen herover, som vi vil kalde for tempeltrællene, så er de styret af kultur.
For the Levites, it's religion.
For levitterne, så er det religion.
If I can just use it in that term.
Hvis jeg bare kan bruge de begreber.
So I'm saying this is a religious phenomena,
Så jeg siger, at det er et religiøst fænomen.
and that's fine as it is.
Og det er fint, som det er.
But we'll call it the strength. What is the beauty? What is the strength of this system of religion?
Men hvad er styrken, eller hvad er det smukke ved den her?
Before we answer,
Før vi svarer,
we're doing a recap of what?
så laver vi en genfortælling, eller en opsummering af hvad?
What are we recapping?
Hvad er det, vi eller opsummerer igen?
You said we're not recapping the Sabbath. We've done that bit.
Vi opsummerer
What are we
ikke,
recapping?
eller har vi gjort? Hvad er det, vi opsummerer?
I went all the way down the board. Where are we on the board now?
Jeg har gået hele vejen ned ad tavlen. Hvor er vi nu på tavlen?
We did that.
Det har vi også
We're
gjort.
going to go back to it, but we did that.
Vi vil vende tilbage til det, men det har vi gjort.
We're recapping the personalist political. That's why we're talking about this story.
Vi gennemgår det med, at det personlige er det politiske. Derfor gennemgår vi den her historie.
Okay, so this is a religious phenomena.
Okay, så det her, det er et religiøst fænomen.
It's not just cultural.
Det er ikke blot kulturelt.
It's not just the information highway.
Det er ikke blot informationsmotorvejen.
It's the narrow path.
Det er den smalle sti,
to, depending on what your taste is, to nirvana.
afhængig af hvad din smag er, til nirvana.
Or what was the term that was used in the recent UK camp meeting by Catherine?
Eller hvad var begrebet, som for nylig blev brugt på det engelske camp meeting?
Penny said utopia.
Penny, hun sagde utopi.
I want us to see all of these things because it parallels our experience, our theology.
Jeg vil gerne have, at vi ser alle disse ting, fordi det går parallelt med vores erfaring, vores teologi.
Okay, so what's the promotion? What's the strength? We're here, personally political.
Okay, så hvad er styrken? Hvad bliver der reklameret for, at det personlige
Of this religious experience.
af den her religiøse erfaring?
When I take my phone and I'm going to have a religious experience, what's the power? What's the beauty of this?
Når jeg tager min telefon, og jeg vil have en religiøs erfaring eller oplevelse, hvad er det smukke ved det?
Linda.
Yes, the cohesiveness going on, you along with R&D and Virginia, on your mind.
So Linda says there's a cohesiveness or a coming together.
Okay, så Linda, hun siger, at der er en sammenslutning, eller det er
Anyone else?
sammen.
So what I took from that
Så det, som jeg fik ud af det,
is that this tool,
det var, at det her værktøj,
those three components,
de her 3 elementer,
allows me to have a religious experience
i stand gør mig til at have en religiøs oplevelse eller erfaring,
by myself,
alene ved mig selv,
which is what?
hvilket er hvad?
Which is personal, only personal.
Hvilket er personligt, kun personligt,
So
udelukkende.
now I can have a personal experience with God.
Så nu kan jeg have en personlig erfaring eller oplevelse med
And
Gud,
someone standing next to me
og personen, der står ved siden af mig,
will have their personal experience with God.
ville have deres personlige oplevelse og erfaring med Gud,
will it be the same or different?
vil det være den samme eller anderledes?
It will be different.
Det vil være anderledes.
So we're familiar with the term, I think here, divide and conquer.
Så jeg tror, vi er bekendte med begrebet her, der hedder divide and conquer, eller split og besejre.
So when we go back to the history of the rise of radical feminism,
Så når vi går tilbage til startskuddet for radikal feminisme,
and we have all these women who are facing difficulties,
vi har alle de her kvinder, som oplever svære ting.
they're all having what kind of experience?
Hvilken
This
form
one
for
or this
erfaring har
one?
de alle sammen? Den her eller
Making
den?
it easy. They're all having a personal experience.
De har alle en personlig oplevelse,
They think
tror de.
something has to change.
Der er noget, der er nødt til at ændre sig.
And Penny said they have to come together.
Og Penny siger, at de er nødt til at komme sammen.
So when they come together, they realize they've been deceived.
Så når de kommer sammen, så indser de, at de er blevet snydt.
This is not a personal experience.
Det er ikke en personlig erfaring eller oplevelse.
It's a political one.
Det er en politisk.
And we're using that word, but we've defined political in its broadest sense already.
Så vi bruger det begreb, men vi har allerede defineret det i den bredest mulige forstand.
There's a conspiracy going on, if we can say that, if we can use it that way.
Der er en konspiration, som foregår, hvis vi kan sige det på den måde.
So you can only understand the political when something changes.
Så man kan kun forstå det politiske, når noget det ændrer sig.
What change must happen to understand the political?
Hvilken ændring er nødt til at ske, før man kan forstå det politiske?
You have to come together, Linda said.
Man er nødt til at komme sammen, siger Linda.
There is something special and unique
Der er noget særligt og unikt,
that's shown in the 66 books,
som bliver vist i de 66 bøger,
which is what?
hvilket er,
You have to come together.
at man er nødt til at komme sammen.
God's kingdom on earth is not about an individual experience.
Guds rige her på jorden handler ikke om en eller anden individuel oplevelse.
If a spirit prophecy quote comes to your mind, if we can paraphrase it,
Hvis et citat fra profetiens ånd kommer op hos dig,
God is not gathering something, God is gathering something.
Gud han samler ikke et eller andet, Gud han samler et eller andet.
I'll do the first one then. God is not gathering individuals.
Okay, jeg vil gøre den første. Gud han samler ikke individer eller individuelle.
God is saving a people.
Gud han frelser et folk.
It's all about group or groupthink.
Det hele handler om gruppen eller gruppetankegang.
That might sound bad, but if I use the word synchronization, that might be a more pleasant word to hear.
Det ord lyder måske negativt, men hvis jeg bruger ordet synkronisering, så er det måske bedre, lyder det bedre.
So we'll think, well, I'll just call it the internet now. The internet is a good thing.
Så vi tror alle, nu vil jeg bare kalde det for
And I'm not saying it's not.
ting. Og jeg siger ikke, det ikke er det.
I'm not saying don't use it.
Jeg siger ikke, at man ikke skal bruge det.
But what I am saying
Men det, som jeg siger,
is this idea of individualism
det er, at den her idé om individualisme
is not something that's good.
ikke er noget, der er godt.
It's something that is in opposition to God's plan of salvation.
Det er noget, der er i modsætning til Guds frelseplan.
And all of these individuals or corporations or the state
Og alle de her individer staten eller virksomheder,
Their objective to control us, and I don't want to sound conspiratorial,
deres formål med at styre os, og jeg prøver ikke at lyde konspiratorisk,
or help us, or make money, depending on how you view it,
eller hjælpe os, eller tjene penge, alt afhængig af, hvordan man ser det,
is to divide and conquer.
det er at splitte og besejre.
So you don't understand what is happening.
Så man ikke forstår, hvad det er, der foregår.
Now, I haven't watched the movie The Matrix, but that is exactly what's going on in that story.
Jeg har ikke set filmen The Matrix, men det er præcis det, der foregår i den film.
There's a system that doesn't want you to understand what is actually going on.
Der er et system, som i virkeligheden ikke vil have, at du forstår, hvad det er, der foregår.
And the internet, I should say the iPhone, but this whole experience has weaponized this issue here.
Og internettet, det har gjort det her problem her til et våben.
And I don't want to be critical of this,
Jeg vil ikke være kritisk ved det her,
but the fact that we as a movement have become comfortable with Zoom
men det faktum, at vi som bevægelse er blevet komfortable med Zoom,
which is a kind of a halfway house of individualism,
hvilket på en eller anden måde er halvvejs hen til individualisme,
because you can have Sabbath in your pajamas,
hvor man kan holde tilbage i sine pyjamas,
you can go to church and be eating breakfast at the same time,
man kan gå til kirke og spise morgenmad samtidig.
all things you cannot do,
Alle ting, som man ikke kan gøre,
you wouldn't dare do,
det vil du ikke,
you wouldn't be allowed to do
du vil ikke få lov til at gøre det,
if we came as a group and worshipped together.
hvis vi kom som en gruppe, og vi tilbad sammen.
So we as a movement have slipped into this arena
Så vi som bevægelse, vi er gået ind i den her arena,
and if you just take this one principle here, you can see we're falling foul of the truth.
og hvis man bare tager det her ene princip, så kan man se, at vi er langt fra sandheden.
So if you can see that tell me when you can hear me. Okay, so we are falling foul of this issue. We're failing.
Så vi fejler det her emne,
When we come to this idea or this principle of the personalist political,
når det kommer til det her spørgsmål om det personlige og det politiske.
and I'm not saying I have a solution to the problem, but I want to point the problem out.
Jeg siger ikke, jeg har løsning til problemet, men jeg vil gerne pointere problemet nu.
Because this is weaponizing the principle of division and conquer.
Fordi det gør princippet om at dividere og sejre til et våben.
Okay, any questions or any thoughts?
Nogle spørgsmål eller tanker?
So in our last presentation,
Så i vores sidste præsentation,
I said we need to use, there are others, but we need to use Eden to Eden and the personalist political
så sagde jeg, at vi er nødt til at bruge den her model fra eden til eden, og det personlige og det politiske,
to help us to answer the question
for at hjælpe os med at besvare spørgsmålet
about Sabbath keeping.
omkring det at holde tilbage.
and how we should view it, how we should approach it.
hvordan vi skal se på det, og hvordan vi skal tilgå det.
The spirit or the letter.
Om det er lovens ånd eller lovens bogstav.
So as a group, we're happy that this line as it's written is correct.
Så hvis vi er tilfredse som gruppe, at den her linje, den er korrekt,
No one has corrected it as far as I recall.
der er ikke nogen, der har rettet det, så vidt jeg ved.
And we began talking about Eden and ending in Eden.
Og vi begyndte at tale om eden, og hvordan vi endte i eden igen.
And we spent quite a bit of time trying to understand what that symbol or that concept meant.
Og vi brugte ret lang tid på at forstå, hvad det her symbol og det her koncept, det betød,
When it talks about Eden to Eden.
når det taler om eden til eden.
So we picked up 5 points.
Okay, så vi samlede 5 punkter op.
We said this was at the beginning, it was before sin, there was equality, this was the kingdom of God, and it was on the new earth.
Vi sagde, at det var begyndelsen. Vi sagde, at der var lighed. Vi sagde, at det var edens have. Vi sagde, at det var
Beginning, before
Begyndelsen.
sin,
før synden,
equality,
lighed,
kingdom of God,
Guds rige
and the new earth.
og en ny jord.
And the translators have got a copy of this board on your chat.
Og oversætteren,
So I added the word new here. Yesterday we didn't have that.
så jeg tilføjede det her bogstav her, N for ny. Det havde vi ikke i går.
And then we went to the end, the omega,
Dernæst gik vi til enden, til
and
omega,
we tried to understand what that Eden meant there.
og vi forsøgte at forstå, hvad eden betød der.
And we saw it had all the same principles, the same ideas,
Og vi så, at de samme principper og de samme idéer
it's the end,
gik igen fra
the end
start
of sin,
til enden, afslutningen eller enden,
equality,
afslutningen lighed,
kingdom of God.
Guds rige,
And we came to the conclusion that this was on the new earth after the millennium.
og vi kom til den konklusion, at det her, det var den nye jord efter årtusindet.
Not on the board here, but we went after the second advent.
Så vi gik igennem alt det her på tavlen, og så, at efter det andet komme,
We went into the 1,000 years,
så gik vi ind i de 1000 år,
and we saw that sin had not really come to an end.
og vi så, at synden, det egentlig ikke endnu var blevet bragt til ophør.
Satan and Satan's angels are still alive and well.
Vi så, at Satan, han stadig er i live, og han har det godt.
And near the end of the 1,000 years, the wicked will be resurrected.
Og efter de 1000 år, så vil de syndige, de vil blive genrejst.
And I made the point that if you looked at the two sides, there could be a possibility that Satan would win.
Og jeg lavede pointen, at hvis man kigger på mulighederne, så er der en chance for, at Satan vil vinde.
So the sin problem hasn't really ended.
Så at syndsproblemet, det var egentlig ikke ophørt.
That's why we had the new earth, not heaven.
Og derfor skrev vi det nye jord, og ikke himlen.
So that was our suggestion. People, please comment or message if they have a different opinion.
Så det er det, som jeg foreslog. Og jeg beder folk kommentere eller skrive, hvis de har en anden holdning.
And what we saw,
So
the great test that precedes the end is gender and sexism.
Det var, at den store test, som gik forud for enden, det var køn og sexisme.
So we're all familiar with this chiasm.
Så vi er alle bekendte med den her kiasme.
So I just want to I don't want to trouble people, but I just want to explore something.
Så jeg har ikke lyst til at gøre folk bekymrede, men jeg vil gerne lige udforske noget.
Let's go to heaven,
Lad os gå til himlen,
the new earth.
det nye jord.
We've got equality there.
Vi har lighed derovre.
So I want to just ask people to describe what they think equality will look like
Så jeg vil gerne lige have
in
folk,
the new world when sin is all done away with.
hvordan lighed det ser ud i den nye jord, når der ikke længere findes synd.
I want us to explore or try and explain how we view equality. What do we think it even means?
Jeg vil gerne have, at vi prøver at forklare lighed, og hvad det overhovedet betyder.
When you look to, well, I'm just going to say heaven mostly. When we look to heaven, what do we think equality looks like? What are you imagining that place to be?
Når vi kigger på himlen, hvordan forestiller vi os så, at lighed det ser ud? Hvordan det sted det er?
Linda.
Linda,
Like heaven before sin, everybody is, well, there was a hierarchy.
Okay, so Linda says there's going to be hierarchy.
okay, Linda hun siger, at der vil være hierarki.
Carry on.
Probably not.
Oh, not hierarchy.
Well, we're gonna have
Det er ikke hierarki.
God, Christ, and then it'll be us. I don't think we're gonna be equal to that.
So there's hierarchy.
Okay, så
So
we-
when we talk about equality, Linda says that sure there's equality, but
okay, så Linda så siger, at der er lighed.
so under equality,
Okay, så lighed,
there's hierarchy.
så der er lighed, der er hierarki.
Anything else?
Noget andet?
So that we've got equality in the sense, men are gonna be with women.
So Linda says men will be equal to women.
Okay, så Linda siger, at mænd de vil være lige til kvinder med kvinder.
So you believe there's going to be men and women?
Okay, så du tror, der vil være mænd og kvinder?
We're gonna give it bodies and there is no qualifications. Maybe there's no gender. I don't know.
Okay, so Linda's not sure if there's going to be men or women.
Okay, så Linda er i tvivl om, der vil være mænd og kvinder.
Okay, but she says that human to human, they're all going to be equal.
Men menneskerne iblandt, så vil de være lige. Men lige.
Okay, so now she's been forced to shift because now she's saying the 144,000
Okay, så nu tvinges hun til at skifte, fordi 144.000,
are different to the rest.
de adskiller sig fra de andre.
And yesterday, people were saying that we will be teaching them.
Og i går, der sagde folk, at vi vil undervise dem,
The people who have died in the past.
folk som døde i fortiden.
Anything else, anyone? Or
Nogle andre? Eller
Alyssa?
Are we supposed to be equal to God, God's heart, so we have Jesus as God's.
So Alyssa says
så Elisa siger,
that we're going to be equal to God.
at vi vil være lige med Gud.
We're going to be the counterpart.
Vi vil være modstykket.
So there won't be this hierarchy.
Så der vil ikke være det hierarki.
And I think Penny said the same.
Og Penny, jeg tror hun sagde det samme.
Any other thoughts?
Nogle andre tanker?
Bob?
Knowing that Jesus is God, King of the universe, you have to understand he came and represented himself as a servant. And so that ties in with understanding that the counterpart and that we all serve one another and there's equality. I don't see a hierarchy.
So Bob says that our model of being a king is wrong.
Så Bob siger, at modellen med en konge og,
And that Jesus is a servant king.
og at Jesus, han er en tjenerkonge.
So when we talk about our experience in heaven,
Så når vi taler om vores oplevelse i himlen,
it's going to be the experience of serving one another, not ruling over one another.
så vil det være en oplevelse af at tjene hinanden og ikke herske over hinanden.
Okay. Will people be richer? Will some people be richer than others?
Vil nogen være rige, og vil nogen være rigere end andre?
Penny said no.
Inden I siger nej,
So Linda says we're all going to have different crowns.
Linda siger, at vi alle vil have forskellige kroner.
Sarah?
Så
Oh, you said the same thing. Oh, okay. So we're going to have different crowns.
vi vil have forskellige kroner.
White also says that
Go ahead.
also said that nobody cared.
So Ellen White said everybody was satisfied with their own crown.
Så Alice siger, at alle vil være tilfredse med deres egen krone,
Except me.
udover mig.
Because while I could say that it's fair,
Og selvom at jeg vil kunne sige, at det er fair,
I'd be beating myself up that I didn't get more stars.
så vil jeg hakke på mig selv, for at jeg ikke fik flere stjerner.
Unless God changes me in the twinkling of an eye and I think differently.
Medmindre Gud han ændrer mig på et splitsekund, og jeg tænker anderledes.
Bob,
We
Up.
cast, all of us cast our crowns at Jesus' feet.
so Bob says we'll cast our crowns at Jesus' feet.
Så Bob siger, at vi kaster vores kroner for Jesu fødder,
But we do take them back.
men vi tager dem jo også tilbage.
No. Oh, so
I never heard that.
so I think that we like a graduation, we throw our hats in the air and we collect them back.
Okay, så jeg tror, at det er ligesom Bob siger, at det er ligesom
And Bob said he hadn't heard that
afslutning, hvor
before.
man kaster
So I might be wrong.
det op, og man samler dem efterfølgende. Bob siger, at det har han ikke hørt om før, så
Okay, I know I'm smiling, but these are serious points. Please remember that.
okay, så jeg ved, jeg smiler, men det er alvorlige punkter. Vær venlig at huske det.
Somewhere in my mind, this goes back to the ground, that we're going to have a mantle to settle on, so. Somebody else, so, I don't know why we're belaboring the point, but you will be happy. I'm telling you, we have a crown, whatever your crown looks like, if you're not happy. You're not going to heaven, because, I mean, the people are gonna be there are gonna be happy.
Okay, so Kathy said that according to her memory, and I think she's correct, we have a shelf in our homes where we place our crowns.
Kathy siger, at vi har en hylde på i vores hjem, hvor vi lægger vores krone.
And she said, unless I'm happy with my crown, I can't get to heaven.
Og hun sagde, at medmindre jeg er tilfreds med min krone, så kan jeg ikke komme til himlen.
Okay, so I'm not going to fight that.
Okay, så det vil jeg ikke bestride.
So this is our view of equality.
Okay, så det er vores syn på lighed.
The 144,000,
De 144.000,
no one mentioned that only they can enter the temple.
der er ikke nogen, der nævner, at kun de kan gå ind
They
i
seem to be treated special.
De lader til at blive behandlet særskilt på
And
en særlig måde.
I think the group here believe that all those millions of others won't be jealous or envious.
Og jeg tror, at gruppen tror her, at alle andre i det her område, de vil ikke være jaloux.
Which I find it hard to believe, to be frank.
Hvilket jeg ærligt finder svært at tro.
Kathy,
Kathy,
I think that's a human mind, and
the same one I'm going to take to heaven with me.
but you've got, where's the divinity part? You've got to have the divinity and not just the humanity mixed with that.
Okay, so I'm talking about jealousy and envy.
okay, jeg snakker om jalousi,
And Kathy said, these are human emotions. I've got to have more divinity in me.
hun siger, at det er menneskelige følelser, jeg skal have mere guddommelighed i mig.
And that's probably been my problem for a few decades.
Og det har nok været mit problem for i et par årtier.
That's okay. That's okay. Go ahead.
Not wanting what somebody else has. Having the behaviors that I can't see.
Okay, so everybody says I'm too nice to be envious.
Så alle siger, at jeg er for venlig og for rar til at være jaloux.
You don't have to. They don't want to translate that. I've never heard that before. They're not going to translate Penny. Okay, this is a great test. You have to translate her.
Okay, det er en stor test. Du skal oversætte dem. Du skal
David
oversætte.
was an earthly king, and yet his idea was that he would be satisfied with being a doorkeeper in God's kingdom.
Okay, so I've got a Bible verse that talks about David being happy with the lowest position in the sanctuary service.
Okay, så der er et bibelvers om David, der vil være tilfreds med at have den laveste stilling i Guds tempel.
So I just want to put these thoughts together.
Så jeg vil gerne prøve at samle de her tanker.
Okay, separate to our emotional response.
Så ved siden af vores emotionelle respons,
Separate to our emotional response to the concept of equality.
separat for vores emotionelle respons omkring det med lighed,
It seems to me
så lader det på mig til,
that based upon just these few points, and there are a fair few more,
alene baseret på de her punkter, og der er en del flere,
that we're not all as equal as we might think.
så er vi alle måske ikke så lige, som vi måtte tænke.
Or as they say about communism,
Så, eller som man siger om kommunisme,
there are some more equal than others.
der er nogen, der er mere lige end andre.
You get the irony of that statement.
I forstår ironien af det udsagn.
So I don't want to explore it now more, but I want us to really think about what we envisage equality to look like.
Så jeg vil ikke snakke mere om det nu, men jeg vil gerne have, at vi alle tænker mere over, hvordan vi forestiller os, at lighed det ser ud.
Because here,
Fordi her,
did you say something? No. Because here, this is a shadow. This test of sexism or equality is a shadow of what this experience will be.
den her test om sexisme og lighed, det er en skygge af, hvad det her det kommer til at være. Den her oplevelse kommer
And
til
I'm
at være.
not really worried too much about that, but that was just the introductory thought to make us think about what this test is about.
Jeg er ikke rigtig bekymret om det, men det var blot en introducerende tanke til, hvad den her test kommer til at handle om.
So let's flip back to the beginning.
Okay, så lad os gå tilbage til begyndelsen.
What did equality look like there?
Hvordan så lighed ud der?
We're on the new earth.
Vi er på en ny jord.
Humanity hasn't fallen yet. Well, that would be here.
Menneskeheden er endnu ikke faldet endnu. Det vil være her.
Just before number one.
lige før nummer 1.
So we're in this history just before that.
Så vi er i den her historie lige inden det.
What does equality look like?
Hvordan ser lighed ud?
Bob,
We know that,
Oh.
that Lucifer was the highest angel. However, that translates, and when Jesus revealed, or when the God had revealed the equality that Jesus had with the Godhead, Lucifer wasn't happy with that.
okay, so Bob's taken us back into heaven
Okay, så Bob han tager os tilbage til himlen
before the creation of humanity.
før menneskehedens
But I
skabning.
think we established yesterday this was the new earth experience.
Men jeg tror, som vi fik etableret i går, så var det den oplevelsen på den nye jord.
Did anybody have any comments on that?
Var der nogen, der havde nogle tanker omkring det?
I was just gonna say.
Go ahead.
He would not have been made David was the son.
So Linda said Eve was not made to feel lower than Adam.
Okay, så der blev sagt, at Eva, hun ikke blev skabt til at føle sig lavere end Adam.
By whom?
Af hvem?
So Adam wouldn't make Eve feel lesser than him.
Så Adam ville ikke få Eva til at føle sig som mindre end ham.
Any other thoughts?
Nogle andre tanker?
Say that again.
That they shared responsibility.
So Alyssa said that they shared responsibilities.
Så Elisa siger, at det er et delt ansvar.
Equally,
Delt de det lige?
Suspicion that it wasn't.
okay, so Alyssa says they shared responsibility, but not equally.
Okay, Elisa hun siger, at de delt ansvar med.
You say more? No? Carol?
Carol?
So Carol said that she was Adam's counterpart.
Så Carol siger, at hun var Adams modstykke.
So we've got counterpart,
Så vi har modstykke.
and I think someone said that over here, equal to God, counterpart.
Jeg tror, der er også nogen, der sagde det her. Modstykke lige med Gud.
And then Alyssa says that they're not equal responsibilities. I think you said something along those lines.
Jeg tror, Elisa sagde noget, du var med, at de havde lignende
Anyone else? Oh,
nogle andre.
Kathy?
Kathy.
I just think of the first book of the 5-step series and the Prevention of Prophets and being Patriarchs and Prophets. I mean, how it starts out with the garden and they're just working together, building their garden home, you know, with the forward and everything. And it just is, I think it is, they had true equality and they went around and did the duties that God assigned them to do in taking care of the earth.
So Kathy says that she goes back to read Patriarchs and Prophets,
Så Kathy siger, at hun går tilbage til at læse patriarker og profeter,
and they're working together in the garden.
og de arbejder sammen i haven.
Sharing the work.
De deler arbejdet.
Anything else? Any
Okay.
other comments?
Nogle andre kommentarer?
Go ahead.
So I'll elaborate a little bit more on why I don't think they're equal responsibilities.
Just give us some examples.
So Adam was given the job of naming. Yeah. So
Alyssa says that Adam was given the job of naming the animals and Eve wasn't.
Så Alice siger, at Adam han blev givet det job at navngive dyrene. Det fik Eva ikke.
So that's one example that she's given.
Så det er et eksempel, som hun har givet.
Anything else?
Noget andet?
she wanders off. So leads me to think that there's division somehow.
Division isn't about equality. Division is rebellion. So she spoke about Eve leaving, and there's a division, and I said that division is not to do with equality, it's about rebellion.
Så hun snakker om det her med adskillelse, og adskillelse, det har ikke noget at gøre med Evas adskillelse, og adskillelse har ikke noget at gøre med lighed, det har noget at gøre med oprør, sagde jeg.
Go ahead.
Okay, so, like, why would she leave? He might have said something to her, or like, there could have been a breakdown in that equality to make her do that.
Okay, so now we're presuming things. I don't want to go down there.
Så nu antager vi ting, men det har jeg ikke lyst til at gøre.
Oh,
My understanding is when God created all the animals on this earth and Adam named them, it was only after Adam named them and recognized that he didn't have a counterpart, like he saw the male and female of everything else, that then God made Eve. So he wasn't even present when Adam did that. I don't know how there would be a.
so one example that was given about inequality
Okay, så et eksempel, som blev givet i forhold til ulighed,
was regarding the naming of the animals.
var i forhold til navngivningen af dyrene.
But it's been pointed out that the naming of the animals was done before Eve was created.
Men det er blevet punkteret, at navngivningen af dyrene blev sket før, at Eva var blevet.
Okay, so they're in the garden,
Okay, så de er i haven,
and there's a big boulder or a big rock to move.
okay, så de er i haven, og der er en stor sten, som skal flyttes.
Who would be the one to move it?
Hvem vil flytte den?
Angels. Someone said angels.
Engle.
So someone said angels, but I think they made that one up.
Der er nogen, der siger engle, men jeg tror, det er noget, de har fundet på.
Also, Alyssa gave the wrong answer, saying they work together.
Okay, Lisa, hun gav et forkert svar. Hun sagde, at de vil arbejde sammen.
And Kathy said there were no boulders.
Og Kathy siger, at der var ikke nogen store sten.
So I could have come up with a different example. The point I wanted to make was
Okay, så jeg kunne komme op med et andet eksempel, men den pointe, jeg gerne vil frem til,
who was stronger?
hvem var stærkere?
So the congregation here doesn't know who was stronger.
Okay, så forsamlingen her ved ikke, hvem der var stærkest.
I would direct them to the book that Kathy mentioned, Patriarchs and Prophets, and it tells you.
Okay, jeg vil lede dig til bogen Patriarker og Profeter, hvor det står der.
So there's a pair on a high up branch,
Okay, så der er et par på en højere gren,
and unless she's going to get on his shoulders, who's the one that's going to be able to reach that?
og medmindre at hun kommer. Okay, der er noget frugt på en højere gren, og medmindre hun stiller sig på hans skulder, hvordan vil de så nå det?
Adam.
Hvem vil så nå det? Det vil
Just go to the same book and it tells you.
Du kan bare gå til samme bog, og der står det hele.
So physically, they're not equal.
Så rent fysisk, der er de ikke lige.
And that's built into the engineering of human beings.
Og det er indbygget i hvordan de sammensætter.
And besides some variation, it's pretty much retained over the last 6,000 years.
Og foruden noget variation, så er det stort set været det samme gennem de seneste 6.000 år.
Any thoughts on that?
Nogle tanker i forhold til det?
Alyssa?
Sounds to me
Yes,
like
sir.
getting into First Corinthians 13, that everybody has different parts. different-
They've all got the same parts.
The different skills, the
Yeah.
different.
Oh,
talents.
so now Alyssa's saying people have got different skills.
Okay, nu siger Lisa, at folk de har forskellige evner,
Different talents.
forskellige talenter.
Doesn't make us less equal.
Alyssa says it doesn't make us less equal.
Jamen, det gør os ikke mindre lige.
So you don't see something built into the system that women are physically weaker, shorter than men. You don't see that as inequality.
Okay, så du ser det ikke som ulighed, at kvinder er kortere eller lavere end mænd, mindre ikke så stærk fysisk.
Tell me the word that you use to describe that, or the concept. If not, you don't want to use equality. What concept is that?
Så fortæl mig ordet.
You can be equal, but different.
Gerne vil bruge
One second, Ron.
konceptet.
One second. I'm just asking Alyssa.
Differentiation, different, there's variation.
No, that's not variation. God engineered that. That's not variation. That's not six
Yeah.
generations down and there's some variation.
Det er ikke
So
variation.
she said, Alyssa
right.
said this is variation,
Jeg
and
ligesom
I'm suggesting that it's
variation,
not.
og jeg foreslår, at det ikke er variation.
Because if God created two beings the same height, the same weight, the same size,
For hvis Gud han skabte to væsener med samme højde, samme størrelse,
5 generations down, there'd be differences
5 generationer senere, så vil der være forskel
because of environmental impact.
på grund af miljøets påvirkning.
But it starts off different.
Men det begynder allerede forskelligt.
Oh, Ron.
Well, two people can be equal but different. I mean, treating somebody equally doesn't mean that they can do everything that you can or that you can do everything they can.
So Ron said that because they were created different sizes, it doesn't mean they're not equal.
Okay, så Ron han siger, at bare fordi det blev skabt i forskellige størrelser, så betyder det ikke, at de kan lige.
So Ron, why were they created different sizes?
Okay, så Ron, hvorfor blev de skabt i forskellige størrelser?
So Ron says he doesn't know,
Så Ron han siger, det ved han ikke.
and I think none of us know,
Og jeg tror, at hvis ingen af os ved det,
but I think it's important for us to try to understand the mind of God.
men jeg synes, det er vigtigt for os alle at prøve at forstå Guds sind.
Because if you were creating something,
Fordi hvis du var i færd med at skabe noget,
I'm guessing with your current understanding of what we'll just call that equality is,
så tænker jeg, at med din nuværende forståelse af, hvad lighed det er,
as Linda said yesterday,
som Linda hun sagde i går,
you would create a socialistic structure,
så vil du skabe en socialistisk struktur,
which is code word for they would be the same.
som er kodeord for, at de vil være ens.
That you would envisage in your mind,
At du vil forestille dig i dit sind,
if you make someone bigger and stronger than the other person,
at hvis du laver den ene person større og stærkere end den anden,
and you give them free mind and free will,
og du giver dem et frit sind og en fri vilje,
what's going to happen?
hvad vil der så ske?
Bob said we've seen it before.
Bob
You
siger,
already know what's going to happen.
det har vi set før. Vi ved allerede, hvad der vil ske.
The bigger person will overpower and control the smaller one.
Den større person vil overmande og kontrollere den mindre person.
So that's the danger.
Så det er faren.
But the question is, why is God doing this from the very beginning? There must be a reason.
Men spørgsmålet er, hvorfor gør Gud det her fra begyndelsen? Der må være en grund.
Sarah, you had a point earlier on, sorry.
Så har du han lidt tidligere.
One thing is concerning us when Eve was created from Adam.
So Sarah's speaking about, as an introductory thought, that Eve is created from Adam's rib.
Så siger jeg som en introducerende tanke, at Eva hun blev skabt fra Adams ribben. Fra hendes
Yeah,
side.
so that shows that really the equality we imagine isn't the way God looked at it.
Okay, so without defining it, Sarah has said
Okay, så uden at definere det, så har Sara sagt,
the way we look at equality isn't the same way that God looks at equality.
at måden vi ser på lighed på, er ikke den samme måde, som Gud ser på lighed.
I don't know if this is her point,
Jeg ved ikke, om det er hendes pointe,
but I just want to add this additional thought on.
men jeg vil blot tilføje den her ekstra tanke.
We've already said that God's going to make them different sizes.
Jeg har allerede sagt, at Gud han vil skabe dem i forskellige størrelser,
So physically, they're not equal.
så fysisk, der er de ikke lige.
And then the way God creates them is different.
Og så er måden, Gud skaber dem på, også forskellig.
And we can put a positive spin on that
Og vi kan sætte et positivt spænd på det,
as Paul tries to do.
som Paulus forsøger at gøre.
But again, if you were in the design business
Men igen, hvis du skulle designe
and you
noget,
were trying to create a perfect world,
og du skulle skabe en perfekt verden,
would you take the second person and create them from a body part of the first?
vil du så tage den anden person og skabe den fra den førstes kropsdel?
I don't think you would do that.
Det tror jeg ikke, du vil gøre.
We don't even understand equality, but we understand that much.
Vi forstår ikke engang lighed, men så meget forstår vi det.
Because it's inherently wrong and it's going to lead to problems.
Fordi det er i grundessensen forkert, og det vil føre til problemer.
So on two counts so far,
Så på to forskellige sider indtil videre,
we've seen that there is some inequality.
så har vi set, hvordan der er noget ulighed.
Now, I'm not arguing that you can make it all look good and say there are differences.
Jeg argumenterer ikke for, at man kan se på det hele og på forskellige måder sige, at der er forskel.
But I want us to understand how we view the equality message, what it means to you.
Men jeg vil gerne have, at vi forstår, hvordan det er, vi ser på lighedsbudskabet, hvad det betyder for os.
When you go from the beginning to the test to the end.
Når man går fra begyndelsen til testen til enden.
Back in the day,
Før i tiden,
we're on this bottom line, not the top one.
jeg er på den nederste linje her, og ikke den øverste.
I call this 144, and that would be Miller.
Jeg vil kalde den her for 144, og det her, det vil være Miller.
Somewhere in this history from 2001 to the Sunday law,
Et sted i den her historie fra 2001 til søndagsloven,
we had a very simplistic idea of what the Sunday law test was going to be.
så havde vi en meget simpel idé af, hvad søndagsloven det vil være.
We have no political or societal concept or model to see what is coming.
Vi havde ikke noget politisk eller samfundsmæssigt koncept, som kunne hjælpe os med at se, hvad der kom, hvad der ventede i
And all
fremtiden.
you have are a few words of inspiration to build your whole life around.
Og alt man har, det er nogle få ord i inspiration, som man bygger hele sit liv omkring.
And I don't think there's any way of getting around that. That's part of the experience we need to go through.
Og jeg tror ikke, der er nogen måde at komme udenom det på. Det er en del af den experience, som vi
So
nu gennemgå.
I think we're in this history in the early rain,
Så jeg siger, at vi er i den her historie her,
and without trying to mess this line up,
Og uden at forsøge at ødelægge den her linje,
what would number one be
hvad vil nummer
using
1 så være?
that terminology?
Hun fører den terminologi.
No, using this terminology here,
Nej, ved at bruge den
what
her,
would this waymark be?
hvad vil det her vejmærke så være?
Bob says Sunday law.
Op, han siger søndagsloven.
Anyone else?
Nogle andre?
That means we agree or disagree. Okay.
Er I enige eller uenige?
Alyssa says no.
Looking at the other three is Sunday law probation. So maybe that's.
Okay, so I'm going to put Sunday law here.
Okay, så jeg skriver søndagsloven her.
This is the great test.
Det er den store test.
So we're here,
Så vi er her.
and back in the day, we were here.
Før i tiden, der var vi her.
Now, I don't want to create waymarks in here,
Jeg vil ikke lave yderligere vejmærker herinde.
but there's a consciousness in the movement that we're in the agitation of the Sunday law.
Men der er en konsensus i bevægelsen om, at vi er i oprøret til søndagsloven.
Could someone find the Spirit Prophecy quote for that?
Er nogen, der kan finde,
Pretty sure it's in the Great Controversy.
finde et citat fra profetiens ånd for det? Jeg er sikker på, at det er i en stor strid.
So we're just looking up the agitation of the Sunday law. That's not the phrase that you need to look up. It's not quite said in that way.
Så vi leder efter citatet, der taler om,
Because when we used to talk about it on this line at the top,
fortæller vi alene ud fra den her øverste linje,
we weren't in the agitation.
så var vi ikke i den her agitation.
How do I know we weren't in the agitation?
Hvordan ved jeg, at vi ikke var i agitationen?
How did I know, or how am I saying that when we spoke about the forthcoming Sunday law here, the time of the end magazine, however you want to conceptualize it,
Hvordan vidste jeg, at det var her før den her agitation, før udgivelsen af Time of the End magazine nu?
because that was pre-agitation.
Fordi det var præ-agitation. Det var forud for agitation.
Oh, we can't find it yet.
Okay, vi kan ikke finde det.
The question before in the Sunday laws of the Bible being that so long ago.
Yes, agitation, that's it. It's great controversy.
Ja, det er stor strid.
Yeah. So agitation
Okay, så agitation
is great controversy,
er den store strid.
605,
Side 605.
paragraph 605, paragraph 3.
605, paragraf 3.
Now I know how it's written,
Vi ved, hvordan det står skrevet.
it kind of infers that we're doing the agitating,
Det hensyder til, at det er os, der agiterer.
and I'm not discussing who's doing the agitating
Jeg diskuterer
in
ikke,
real life.
hvem der agiterer i det virkelige liv.
I'm going to paraphrase, but in the statement it says
Jeg vil genfortælle, men i udsagnet, hvad står der?
something like the soon coming.
Noget med, at det snarlige komme.
With the inference that thinks that something can be seen.
Med hentydning til, at noget kan ses.
So someone is going to the politics
Så nogen går ind i politikkerne,
and they're saying we can see
Og de siger, vi kan se
what has been predicted.
det, som er blevet
So
forudsagt.
there may be different people who are doing the seeing and doing the predicting, but that's not what the point I want to make.
Så der er måske nogle forskellige mennesker, der siger, hvem der er, der laver forudsigelsen og så videre, men det er ikke den pointe, jeg vil nå frem til.
Before the Sunday law,
Før søndagsloven
in society,
i samfundet,
you have to see evidence of what you are already preaching about.
der er man nødt til at se evidens for det, man allerede prædiker om.
And when we spoke on this line, the 144,000 line here,
Og da vi talte her, de 144.000's linje,
how much evidence did we have of the soon coming Sunday law?
hvor meget evidens havde vi da for det snarlige søndagslov?
Zero.
No.
None.
Ingen.
It
Intet.
was all based upon what we read in inspiration.
Det hele, det var baseret på det, som vi læste i inspirationen.
So now we're on this line.
Så nu er vi på den her linje.
We've predicted based upon Alpha and Omega, or Eden to Eden,
Og vi har forudsagt, baseret på alfa og omega, eller eden til eden,
that the great test is gender, sexism, equality.
at den store test, det er køn, sexisme og lighed.
And we've moved along the line sufficiently
Og vi har bevæget os tilpas meget på linjen,
that we're now confident that we can see this test in society being developed.
at vi nu er selvsikre på, at den her test, den er ved at blive udviklet i samfundet.
And I'm arguing that we're in the agitation.
Og jeg argumenterer for, at vi er i den her agitation.
And in this class, we're not discussing what that waymark was
Og i
or
den her,
is.
i den her lektion, der diskuterer vi ikke, hvad det her vejmærke det er, eller hvad det var.
That if it's past or we're just in it.
Men det var i fortiden, eller om vi er i det.
So the reason why this is important
Så grunden til, at det er vigtigt,
is I want to now use personalist political. I want to use personal political differently.
det er, at jeg gerne vil bruge det personlige og politisk anderledes.
I just want us to take the concept of a personal experience and the societal experience.
Jeg vil gerne have, at vi kan se det her som en personlig erfaring eller oplevelse, og
So don't
se
get confused about that.
erfaring.
Politics is politicians,
Politik er politikere,
and what's the job of a politician?
og hvad er en politikers job?
No, the job is not to get re-elected. Represent the people,
For at repræsentere folket,
to govern the people,
for at værne folket,
to guide and govern the people,
for at vejlede og værne om folket,
to make laws.
for at lave love.
Right here,
Det er lige her.
law. Okay,
Law.
so we're expecting a law here.
Okay, så vi forventer en lov her.
Don't get tripped up by that,
Bliv ikke forvirret over det,
because I think there's more to learn about that issue.
for der er mere at lære om det her emne.
So as we look to the political arena, we're expecting a law.
Så i takt med, at vi kigger på den politiske arena, der forventer vi en lov.
Or laws,
Eller love,
or the way the government governs.
eller måden, som regeringen den regerer
Its
på,
ethos,
dens ethos,
which is normally connected to laws.
hvilket normalt er forbundet med lov til lov.
And then there's your personal experience.
Så er det din personlige erfaring.
So it may be
Så det kan være,
that the societal test
at den samfundsmæssige test
may well be different to your personal experience.
muligvis kan være forskellig og anderledes fra din
So I just want to point that out.
erfaring og oplevelse.
But because we're in the agitation,
Men fordi vi er i
we're
agitation,
all having a personal experience, whether you're a man or a woman,
vi har alle en personlig erfaring, hvad end du er mand eller kvinde,
single or married,
single eller gift,
parent or child,
forælder eller barn.
we can see what's happening in the world.
Vi kan se, hvad der sker i verden.
So we should already have a pretty good idea of what this law is going to be about.
Så vi burde allerede have en ret god idé om, hvad den her lov den kommer til at handle om.
We'll put Sunday laws.
Vi kan lad os skrive søndags love.
I think we should already have a good idea of what they're about.
Jeg synes, vi allerede burde have en ret god idé om, hvad de handler om.
If that's the case,
Hvis det er tilfældet,
when it comes to your personal lives,
når det kommer til jeres personlige liv,
these laws may not impact you directly.
så vil de her love muligvis ikke påvirke dig direkte.
And that's something that, if true, is not a phenomena that we used to understand in this model of a Sunday law.
Og det er noget, som, hvis det er rigtigt, er et fænomen, som vi ikke har set i den her historie her, vedrørende søndagslovene.
Because in that Sunday law model, that test touches everybody, man, woman, and child.
Og i den her periode her, med søndagslovtesten, der var det enhvert menneske
In a really personal and literal sense.
på en meget personlig og bogstavelig måde.
And in the agitation
Og i agitationen,
that we're experiencing now,
som vi oplever nu,
we don't have time to discuss what the agitation, like a definition, a working definition of what that means.
vi har ikke tid til at diskutere, hvad agitationen, hvad en reel definition af det er.
So I might be wrong, but I'm proposing that the agitation looks the same as Sunday law.
Jeg kan muligvis tage fejl, men jeg vil foreslå, at agitationen, den ligner søndagsloven.
So if we were to go round the room in our small group,
Så hvis vi spurgte alle herinde i vores lille gruppe,
and I were to ask the political landscape, the issues that are confronting society,
det politiske landskab, de problematikker, som konfronterer samfundet,
are they directly affecting you?
påvirker de dig direkte?
I think the vast majority of you you'd say no.
Så tror jeg, at langt størstedelen af jer vil sige nej.
And this is a territory that we're unfamiliar with.
Og det er et territorie, som vi er ubekendte med.
Because we're so used to this model,
Fordi vi er så
the
vant
144,000 old model.
til 144.000, den gamle model.
Either there's going to be something significantly different that will touch each of us personally, individually,
Enten så vil det være noget signifikant, der vil berøre os hver især personligt,
which we have no visibility of at the moment,
som vi på nuværende tidspunkt ikke har noget synlighed omkring,
which means we're not in the agitation,
hvilket betyder, at vi ikke er i agitationen,
which impacts our concept of raffia, panium, Ukraine. All of that comes into question then.
hvilket der vil bringe spørgsmål til alle de her emner som rafia, panium, Ukraine.
But if it's all correct,
Men hvis det hele er rigtigt,
when we start looking we haven't listed what the agitation is. I understand we haven't done that.
når vi begynder at kigge på, hvad agitationen er, og jeg forstår, at vi ikke har,
But if we did,
hvad det er, men hvis vi gjorde,
and we had 3 points, say,
og vi havde, lad os sige, 3 punkter,
I'm sure there would be at least a good sized minority, if not the majority, in this room that would say that doesn't directly affect me.
så er jeg sikker på, at der vil være en stor minoritet, hvis ikke en majoritet af folk her i rummet, der vil kunne sige, at det påvirker ikke mig direkte.
And I think that's something that we need to understand and get to grips with.
Og jeg tror, det er noget, vi skal forstå og tage til os.
Bob,
At some point, even if an individual isn't affected directly by it, ultimately, everyone's affected because everyone has to make a choice.
so Bob says even if we're not directly affected, we all have to make a choice.
Bob siger, at selvom vi ikke alle er direkte påvirket, så skal vi alle træffe et valg.
And I think we should all agree with that.
Jeg tror, at vi alle bør være enige i det.
So that is true,
Så det er sandt.
but my point is that it's a different reality than the reality only a few years ago we believed that we were going to experience. And I think it's important for us to see that.
Men mit pointe er, at det er en helt anderledes realitet end for nogle få år siden, og det er vigtigt for os at se det.
Reproductive rights affects all of us.
Reproduktive rettigheder påvirker os alle,
But it doesn't affect us all personally,
men det påvirker os ikke alle personligt.
not in the same way as a universal Sunday law.
Ikke på samme måde som universel søndagslov.
So there's a personal element that we all have to get our lives in order
Så der er et personligt element i forhold til, at vi alle bør få vores liv i orden.
The movement has to get its house in order with respect to sexism and equality.
Bevægelsen skal få sit liv i orden i forhold til sexisme og lighed.
And I think those concepts are important when we start asking what equality looked like at the very beginning.
Jeg tror, de koncepter de er vigtige i forhold til, at vi forstår, hvordan lighed så ud i begyndelsen.
Because our personal experience of equality may not be the same experience that we have when it comes to the Sunday law equality issue.
Fordi vores personlige syn og holdninger til lighed er muligvis ikke de samme, når det kommer til stykket om søndagslovens lighedsproblematikker.
Okay, we've run out of time to get any further.
Jeg har ikke mere tid nu til at komme videre.
In closing, I just want to make the following observation.
Her i afslutningen, der vil jeg gerne komme med følgende observation.
It's a comment that Bob made earlier.
En kommentar, som Bob han kom med tidligere.
So it's in the history before Eden in heaven.
Det er i historien før Eden i himlen.
So in heaven,
Så i himlen,
if you were an observer,
hvis du observerede,
I think if you looked at those two, we'll call them people,
så tror jeg, at hvis du kiggede på de to mennesker, lad os kalde dem det,
we'll call him Jesus and Lucifer.
lad os kalde ham Jesus og Lucifer.
If you looked at them,
Hvis du kiggede på dem,
how they're treated,
hvordan de blev
how they
behandlet,
behave,
hvordan de opførte sig,
the work they do and the responsibilities they have,
det arbejde, de de udførte, og de ansvarsområder, de havde,
I think
så tror jeg,
you could be forgiven for believing that they are equal.
at du kunne blive tilgivet for at tro, at de var lige.
There's no evidence that Jesus is the superior of Lucifer.
Jeg tror ikke, der vil være evidens for, at Jesus, han var
It's
Lucifer overlegen.
hidden.
Det var gemt og skjult.
So when we consider how the great controversy begins,
Så når vi tænker på, hvordan den store strid, den begynder,
I agree with Bob, but I have a slightly different perspective of it.
så er jeg enig med Bob, men jeg har et lidt anderledes perspektiv.
It does begin with the subject of equality.
Det begynder med emnet angående lighed,
And the one that is being harmed or hurt
og den, der kommer til skade eller bliver skadet,
the one that has experienced injustice.
den, som har oplevet uretfærdighed.
Bob doesn't like the word me to use injustice because he knows I'm attacking God, I'm guessing.
Jeg bruger ordet uretfærdighed, tror jeg, fordi at det refererer hensyn til, at jeg
We only need to open a few books like I can show you story after story of God's injustice.
jeg vil kunne vise flere bøger om Guds uretfærdighed
From a human perspective,
fra et menneskeligt perspektiv.
but it begins with inequality here.
Men det begynder med ulighed her,
And the person who is being hurt is Lucifer,
og personen, som bliver skadet eller såret, er Lucifer,
because he says,
fordi han siger,
Jesus and I are equals. Everybody knows that, and I'm not being treated equally.
at Jesus og jeg, vi er lige, men alle ved, at vi bliver behandlet ulige.
I'm not being treated fairly by God.
Vi bliver ikke behandlet retfærdigt af Gud.
And the reason why some of us have problems with looking at that story from that perspective is because we think we have a clearer view of things.
Og grunden til, at nogen synes, at vi ser på den her historie på en uretfærdig måde, er fordi vi har en klar syn på tingene.
But yesterday, we spoke about empathy,
Men i går, der talte vi om empati,
and I wonder why we don't have empathy for Lucifer,
og jeg tænker over, hvorfor vi ikke har empati for
the
Lucifer,
experience that Lucifer had to go through.
og den erfaring eller oplevelse, som Lucifer skulle gå igennem,
And the pain that Lucifer had to experience.
og den smerte, som Lucifer han skulle opleve.
Because we just passed it off as a test, the great test.
Fordi vi omtaler det blot som en test, en stor test.
Because if it's the great test, it must have been Lucifer's great test.
Fordi hvis det er den store test, så må det også have været Lucifers store test.
But it's all flipped on its head now,
Men det hele er vendt på hovedet nu.
because the great test isn't about equality,
Fordi den store test, den handler ikke om lighed.
it's about recognizing his inequality.
Det handler om at anerkende hans ulighed.
So I just wanted to make that point.
Jeg vil blot komme med den pointe.
We talk about equality in parabolic terms,
Vi taler om lighed i lignelsesmæssige termer.
and what is stressing this movement, what is causing stress to it,
Og det, som stresser den her bevægelse,
is transitioning from a theory or an idea, a parable, to reality.
er overgangen fra en lignelse, fra en teori til realiteten.
Because every time I bring up reality,
Fordi hver gang jeg bringer realiteten op,
the size, the rib,
størrelsen, ribbenet,
people want to stay in the parable and excuse it.
så vil folk gerne blive i lignelsen og undskylde det.
And that's fine in a parabolic world
Det er fint i en verden fuld af lignelser,
where we all claim to be radical feminists here at the agitation.
hvor vi alle hævder at være radikalfeminister her ved agitationen.
But the movement doesn't even know what the kingdom of radical feminism looks like.
Men bevægelsen ved ikke engang, hvad radikalfeminismens rige det ser ud som.
We're not settled on how that operates.
Vi har ikke alle en fast forståelse af, hvordan det fungerer.
And if we're saying this is the kingdom of radical feminism,
Og hvis vi siger, at det her det er radikalfeminismens rige,
which is the same setup that you would have had before the creation of the earth,
hvilket er det samme setup, du vil have før jordens skabelse.
one thing you know,
En ting, som man ved,
that the subject of equality is not settled.
det er, at emnet om lighed, det er ikke til fulde forstået.
It's not settled at the beginning.
Det er det ikke i begyndelsen.
It's not settled at the beginning.
Det er det ikke i begyndelsen.
And therefore, it shouldn't be a surprise that we have no idea what radical feminism even looks like politically.
Derfor burde det ikke overraske, at vi ikke har nogen idé om, hvordan det ser ud politisk.
Let's close with prayer.
Lad os afslutte med bøn.
Dear Lord, we thank you
Tak af dig,
that you continue to teach us
du fortsætter med at lære os,
as we discuss the line of Eden to Eden.
som vi diskuterer linjen fra Edens have til Edens have.
We discuss what the personal and political means to each of us.
Vi diskuterer, hvad det personlige og det politiske betyder for hver enkelt af os.
As we meditate upon the importance of coming together as a body,
Som vi mediterer, hvad det vil sige at komme sammen som et
not only the importance, but the necessity.
en gruppe. Ikke blot vigtigheden, men nødvendigheden.
Help us to have a clearer understanding
Hjælp os til at have en klar forståelse
of what it means on this planet,
af, hvad det vil sige på denne planet,
in this world of sin,
i den her syndfulde verden,
to be radical feminists,
at være radikal feminister.
to understand what equality is in our personal lives,
At forstå, hvad lighed er i vores personlige liv,
and to begin to understand what the political test or tests will be.
til at forstå, hvad den politiske test eller teste vil være,
And how important it is
og hvor vigtigt det er,
that we need to have sympathy and particularly have empathy for those around us.
at vi må have sympati og vigtigst af alt empati for dem omkring os.
Because we may not enter into the same experience as them, literally,
For vi har muligvis ikke den samme bogstavelige oplevelse og erfaring som dem,
but you are teaching us that it's necessary to enter into that experience emotionally.
men du lærer os, at det er nødvendigt at indgå i deres erfaring og oplevelse emotionelt.
We thank you for this camp meeting,
Vi takker dig for dette camp meeting,
for the time we've had together.
for tiden vi har haft sammen.
In Jesus' name, amen.
I Jesu navn. Amen.
This finishes the Arkansas camp meeting. And we want to thank you all for joining us, and we have lots to meditate upon, think upon, and study on as we continue to grow. We want